Hello, my fellow concerned friends, and welcome back to my channel. Thank you so much for showing up and watching and supporting me every single time I post. It genuinely means the world to me. And if you're new here, hello, welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for clicking on my video. Out of all of these other videos you could have clicked on, you chose mine, and I really, really appreciate that. I hope that you can stick around and you can get something beneficial from my content today. Educational facilities are supposed to be the safest environments for children, right? Like daycares, elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, etc. These educational facilities are framed in a way that says, hey, we are safe, we put your child's safety first, and second comes their learning and education, and third comes their socialization, but really they all mesh together. So students, whether it be daycare, elementary school, middle school, etc., it doesn't matter, students should be able to feel confident that when they walk into their learning facilities or educational facilities that they will be just that. Ultimately safe, right? They don't have to worry about the dangers because they know that the workers around them are there to deal with it anyway and deal with it for them to keep them safe. They just have to worry about making sure that they learn and they're paying attention and of course ultimately having fun, hanging out with their friends, playing games, etc., right? But unfortunately that is not the case for every educational center. And if you're not new to my channel, especially this year for some reason, you will know that we talk about these kinds of dangerous teachers and facilities a lot, unfortunately, because unfortunately it happens more than we would like to acknowledge. So I do just want to give a brief trigger warning for you guys that today's topic is going to be really sensitive because we are once again looking at a case of a daycare teacher who has been charged for some of the most heinous charges you can imagine for someone whose job is to keep toddlers safe. This came to my attention because I was scrolling on my For You page when I had seen at that point like 3 different videos talking about these people being mutuals with somebody on TikTok and finding out that they went to jail. And it wasn't until about the 3rd video on this that I had seen that I realized exactly what they went to jail for. And so I decided to go on this person's TikTok myself, and that's when I saw that they followed me. Now, before we get into the charges, exactly what happened and what is going on with her right now, legally speaking, I wanted to take you through some of her posts. Because consistently in a lot of the comment section, as well as some of the videos that were on my For You page, this person's mutuals were shocked. Like this came out of absolutely nowhere. And after looking at some of the posts that she has posted herself, I can understand how blindsided some of her online mutuals were. And I can't imagine how much even more blindsided people who are close to her in her personal life are probably feeling as well. I would like to say that I'm surprised that she was following me and that I was shocked to see a kind of person like this following me, but I am not, because as we will get more into later, I have dealt with this kind of shock multiple times in my life, and I will be sharing 2 personal stories that involved my stepdad and my biological dad that were absolutely reality shattering for me. And unfortunately, I am very well aware that oftentimes some of the worst people will be the loudest against the very kind of person they themselves are. This is the TikTok user Pretty in Pink, or legally known as Faith Lynn Morris, and she is currently incarcerated in Medina County, Ohio. And as I show you guys some of these posts, I think you'll be able to see what I mean when I say that it's not very surprising that so many mutuals were shocked, blindsided. Probably a lot of the followers also shocked and blindsided, at least those who know and are aware. Because a lot of her posts talk about her own personal struggles that she has experienced and healing and dealing with her mental health due to the things that happened to her in her childhood, as well as posts advocating against social injustices. This was posted February 15th of this year, and the blurb on the screen says, "If only the little girl who thought she would never be safe could see us now." And it's a video of her reading a letter that she wrote her, I'm presuming, boyfriend or husband, her partner, and it's just a love letter talking about how safe he makes her feel and how much she loves him and all the things she loves him and blah, blah, blah. The point being is that this is a healing post. You know, anybody who would be scrolling through and looking at this could see it as hope, right? Like, I may have spent my entire life feeling unwanted and unloved, often for a lot of us, due to our very own parents. So maybe there is hope out there someday that I will feel those things myself. Here's a post from April 26th that reads, Top 5 horror movies. 1, finally coming to terms of who the people I grew up with and watching them defend a POS. 2, meeting my father and watching him take no accountability. 3, 4, CPS, and 5, the regret of an FA. Now, I don't know what an FA is, I'll be honest, but I can say this, that for a lot of us, especially if you're a subscriber to this channel, can relate to a lot of those things. I relate to foster care and CPS being a horror movie and coming to terms with who the people I grew up with and the way I saw them is just not true. I can relate to this, and so many other people can. This is another top 5 horror movies post that she made on May 11th of this year that reads, number 1, my father. Number 2, his wife. Number 3, refusing to believe a 14-year-old. Number 4, forcing me to make a choice I didn't understand yet. Remember that for later. Number 5, posting on Facebook and TikTok like you are both innocent. And ironically, like I said, this was posted May 11th, and that is actually also the same day that she was arrested by the Hinckley Police Department in Ohio. I hope I said that right. And here's the last one from her account that I'm going to show you guys. This was posted on May 2nd, which says, anytime I miss my dad, I go back to the messages telling 16-year-old me something would always be wrong with me because I will always be searching for a father's love. So weird. So a lot of irony in a lot of these posts, obviously, but also to anybody who wouldn't know. And that's the thing, a lot of these people you don't know. You could know every single sign and they could be standing right in front of your face and you still wouldn't know, because that's how deceitful these people are. But to anybody scrolling through or a mutual, what you're seeing a lot is somebody sharing their story of struggling through a hard childhood and entering adulthood, doing what they can to heal themselves, to recognize what was wrong and try to change those bad patterns and behavior.
Investigates, excuse me, has learned a Medina County daycare employee is now facing more than a dozen felony charges. We want to warn you now. The details of this story are disturbing.
Very disturbing. Court records show the 19-year-old woman is accused of pandering sexual material involving minors. Accusations first discovered by the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. Now, investigator Peter Fleischer is breaking down the details as the legal process is moving forward.
19-year-old Faith Morris was arrested by Hinckley police on May 11th, according to court records, charged with 14 felonies, 12 related to child material.
According to an indictment, Morris created or published obscene material, including minors as participants. It also says she engaged with or caused the minors to engage in activity. The families of those children say all of that happened here at this Brunswick daycare.
Northeast Ohio law enforcement first became aware of the illegal activity last October through ICAC, the Internet Crimes Against Children Task Force. It's a national network that helps authorities investigate cases where children may be exploited online. Court records don't explain why it took over 6 months to make an arrest, but do confirm Morris was in possession of multiple images and videos of children engaging in sexual activities with adults. 3 News reached out to the daycare where Morris works, Little Busy Bees Early Learning Childhood Center. We eventually made contact using a number listed for one of the daycare's owners. She told us to, quote, talk to her lawyer, end quote, before hanging up. Parents of 6 minors have since filed a civil lawsuit against the daycare, one of its owners, and Morris. Morris's bond was set for $100,000. She's scheduled to be arraigned on Monday, June 8th, with trial set for July 27th. Reporting in Brunswick, Peter Fleischer, 3 News.
Absolutely horrendous, devastating, heartbreaking, deplorable. This is sickening. A child care worker, someone who is quite literally trained on how to put a child's safety as the number one priority, as a former daycare worker trained on proper cell phone usage, on how you should be using your cell phone or not even having it out at all during the operational hours where there are children, whatever. Obviously, every daycare is different, but you are literally trained to not harm a child. And I cannot comprehend how people like this are hired to work around children. I don't understand how this happens. I don't understand how, even if it slips through the cracks, because like we've said, you can know all of the signs and they could be standing right in front of you and you wouldn't know. How are you not paying attention to gaps where children are gone and alone with this teacher, or children are together alone with this teacher, secluded and private? How does nobody notice that when this is taking place in a child care facility, and obviously went on long enough to have enough content to be charged that many times? How does nobody notice anything? So while she's making posts, ironically on the day that she is arrested, talking about one of her horror movies is number 4, forcing me to make a choice I didn't understand yet, she was doing that to children, allegedly. While she is making all of these posts and this content about awareness and how hard being harmed as a child makes adulthood and how much of a struggle it is just to look at yourself in the mirror, just to come to terms with the fact that it wasn't your fault. It is hard to get to that point because we blame ourselves, some of us, forever. She was doing it allegedly to other children in her care, children who looked at her as a safe place, as a safe person, children who trusted her judgment. A teacher. They're there to educate me. Sometimes students and children in general will look at their educators as smarter and more brilliant than even their parents. I have even seen videos online. Recently, I saw a video online of a mom who is a doctor, and their kid had like come home and said something to them that just factually was not true, that they had heard the teacher say. Not that the teacher was trying to be malicious, but a doctor knows a lot more than we do, right? And so the doctor corrected this child, and the child's like, no, you're just a doctor. My teacher is a teacher. So kids put sometimes extra faith in teachers that they don't even put in their own parents. And this is what some of them do with that trust. And I think it's also really important that people understand that when it comes to people doing things like this to children, manipulating them, grooming them, it's oftentimes not violent, it's not scary. I can't speak for every single child and every single person's experience, obviously, but I do know what I know, not only from testimonies of other survivors, but also from my own experience. I loved my stepdad, my best friend, for the majority of my life. Anybody could tell you that I called him my best friend because to me, he was my best friend. I didn't view any of the behavior as bad because to me that was normal, and he told me that it's okay, and why would I not trust him? He treated me really well. He wasn't scary to me until later he became scary. And so oftentimes, especially when it's like a teacher, an educator's position, they will frame these things as almost like a game. There was a PSA actually that I've seen, not recently, but within like the past year or so, and it made me so deeply uncomfortable, and I would love to play it for you guys, but it is so well done that I don't even want to play it for you guys, where it does portray this kind of situation. It portrays a little girl in a classroom, and it seems to be the end of the day, and the male teacher is, saying goodbye to somebody who is walking out of the door, and he closes the door and he locks it, and we know what's happening. But the way that they present it literally, I have goosebumps. He sits down at the table with the little girl and he's talking to her, and then he's like, do you want to play a game? And she's like, yeah, I want to play a game. And he described essentially a tickle game, that he was going to tickle her toes and then work his way up, etc. And I just feel like that is just such a good example of how these things can happen, because I fear that a lot of people who thankfully do not have personal experience and have gone through these things oftentimes will think that the way these things happen is like the teacher or whoever else is like, you're going to do this now or else, blah. And that does happen. That does happen. But it also doesn't happen every single time. And so it breaks my heart to think about the fact that these kids were either threatened and terrified into doing this or groomed and manipulated into thinking that it was okay and normal behavior. Not only between possibly each other, being coached and coerced by their teacher, but also with their teacher as well. And that is an absolutely sickening reality to sit with. And I cannot wrap my mind around how anybody could do this to children. And there is no excuse of, oh, well, she may have been seemingly victimized herself in her childhood. So many of us are. And you know what we do? We fight against it. We go to therapy. We sit down and we look in the mirror and we tell ourselves that no, there is nothing I could have done as a child that would have provoked, that would have, led on an adult. Absolutely nothing. I should be able to be safe enough as a child to walk outside, walk in my living room, anywhere, stark without the fear of someone feeling entitled to harm me. I know I personally victim blamed myself for years, because I would just repeat and echo to myself the things that I was told by the very people who harmed me, and I believed it. I did, and I didn't even realize how skewed and distorted that thinking was until I was in therapy as an adult, explaining to my therapist that, yeah, it was wrong for my stepdad to strangle me, but he said I had an attitude in the way that I was walking away. So if I just hadn't had an attitude, then he wouldn't have had to do that. Guys, I actually believed that for so long. And it was that cognitive dissonance that I had to sit with when my therapist asked me, well, do you think that that would be okay to do to another child? Is that something that you would do to your kid? And I was like, no. I don't think that that's okay at all. I don't even spank my kids. I don't hit them at all. It's not even a thought in my mind, because I would much rather form a safe connection. And then that's when I was like, oh, okay, that is them, not me. And it's in therapy and getting help and unlearning the lies that we were told to believe about ourselves and what was happening to us that prevents us from continuing the same cycle. So there is no excuse. Clearly not, because she herself can post about how harmful it was, about how wrong it was. She already had got to that point, obviously, where she realized that there is no excuse for this to happen. There is no justification. And like I said, a lot of people don't get to that point, and that's really, really sad. And oftentimes they can turn into the very people that harmed them. No excuse. So like I said, mutuals of hers online were absolutely blindsided. And I can only hope to assume that people close to her in her life are also equally blindsided and shocked. I hope that they are not supporting and defending her. Of course, I don't know that. But when things like this come out about somebody that we really trusted, about somebody that we thought that they would never do that, it can be reality shattering. Like actually reality shattering. Like it can leave you in a place where you're like, who am I? What am I? Is anything even real anymore? It literally can shatter your whole perception of reality. It is traumatizing and it's hard to heal through. And this can affect many different kinds of people who are in proximity to somebody who harms children and the truth comes to light. It can happen to partners, to family members, siblings, grandparents, mutuals, like online friends who are blindsided. It can happen to the victim themselves. And certainly I can imagine in this case, as well as cases just like it, absolutely reality shattering for the parents of the children who were harmed by people the parents thought that they could trust more than probably really anybody else. I want to take you guys through some accounts and stories of people that have actually been impacted by real life situations like this, or somebody that they were in proximity to, trusted, were friends with, trusted to care for their children, etc., were found out to be the very kind of person that actually harms children, because I think it's very important that we see that perspective, that we see from other people's personal experiences and accounts how confusing and reality shattering it is, because a lot of times people who are in proximity to people like this, when these things come out, they can face something called courtesy stigma, where essentially that says that if you are in close proximity to somebody like that, then you must be just like them. You must have known the whole time. And therefore, those people themselves can start to be isolated and ostracized and judged and ridiculed for something that they had absolutely no involvement in and oftentimes absolutely no knowledge in. So, how could they have even stopped it? I first want to talk about myself and my experience with my stepdad as well as my biological dad. A lot of you are probably very familiar with what happened with my stepdad, but I'm going to breeze through that one because we talk about it a lot and it's a little bit different than with my biological dad. As I've already mentioned, to me, my stepdad was my best friend growing up. I could go to him for anything. He would get me anything I wanted. I could vent to him about anything, including my mom. I felt so much closer to him than I did my mom. I felt like we had such a better relationship than he and my mom did, and he reinforced all of these beliefs. And I didn't realize that all of the other concerning behaviors were just part of this growing. And it wasn't until I was in 8th grade and I had already caught him filming content of me through holes in my walls. I had already been aware of some weird feelings that I had had with some pictures that he had asked me to take and pose for, for himself and stuff. But I always just chalked it up to my dad's just proud of me. He loves me a lot. He just really wants to show me off and photograph me because I'm just so awesome and beautiful. Well, in 8th grade, he came to me and he sat down in my room and he actually asked me for consent for us to start making one-on-one films together. And it was in that moment that it was like all of those feelings that I had had of like, okay, this is I think that this is pretty weird. Like my friends' parents don't act like this and stuff. It all just came crashing down around me. And I was like, okay, this is all a lie. He doesn't actually love me. All of these pictures aren't innocent. Me catching him in that hole in my wall wasn't just him making sure I wasn't being too loud because it was too late at night, like he ran out of the bathroom and yelled at me for. All of those feelings that I pushed off and I gaslit myself to ignore were real. And I remember feeling so crushed and like as if I had been having this beautiful dream, right? The best dream in the whole world. And then I woke up and I actually lived in a sewage line. That's genuinely, it felt like such a lie. I felt so let down. Like all of these things I held so close to me, I felt like so foolish and scared ultimately. Now, as a lot of you guys know, I did end up going on after, talking to a couple of my friends about the situation and realizing just how serious it was. I did go on and I ended up telling my algebra teacher in 9th grade who sent me to the counselor's office, and I was placed in foster care. But I will never forget that gut-wrenching feeling that I had sitting on my floor that day. And I wished that I had never felt it again. And unfortunately, I did. Years later, actually within the past year, my biological dad was released from prison, I want to say in 2019, and I'm not going to get into all of the reasons that he was incarcerated, but I will tell you that it had to do with substances and creating them and a fire, and due to my own father's horrible negligence, people lost their lives. So yes, he served his time and he should be serving even longer, to be honest, because upon his release in 2019, he went back to the exact same lifestyle. Now, for some context, I never lost contact with my dad growing up when he was in prison. I always wrote letters back and forth. He would always call me. And when I realized what I realized this year, conversations from my childhood, things that he said, things he asked me to promise to him just all clicked and made sense. And once again, my reality was shattered. I remember when he was in prison, he told me that he was involved in a group that took care of people like my stepdad. And I didn't realize, and those were his words, took care of. I thought that that meant one thing, but I realize now as an adult that when he said take care of, he really meant take care of, because I recently found out that the group my dad is involved in is a white racist group. And it made even more sense when I saw those pictures of him for my first time in my life of him without his shirt on when Facebook asked me, you might know this person. And my shock and horror to see those tattoos, those hate symbols, those racist tattoos on his body, and everything made even more sense when I remembered back to when I went no contact with him, bragged to me about and online about how he shook my stepdad's hand, looked him in the face, and knew that he was not lying about why that needed to happen with me. And everything made sense. My whole reality shattering again. I found this thread on Reddit that reads, Redditors who found out a close friend or family member was a sex predator slash how did you find out and how did you handle the situation? And there's lots of comments under here. And I think that it's really important to read these different perspectives because I can give you my perspective, obviously, as the victim to my stepfather, and then the realization and shattering of reality to realize that my biological dad, who I viewed as an ultimate protector, as somebody who would go out of his way to protect me from people exactly like my stepdad, is exactly like my stepdad, absolutely earth-shattering. But I think that it is important to hear different perspectives, right? From people who maybe aren't as close, or maybe somebody who's married to somebody like this, because I've not personally witnessed that perspective because my mom knew and did absolutely nothing about it. This Redditor says, I called the police immediately. I found a video from a hidden camera in our bathroom on my husband's tablet. The video showed my 14-year-old niece. I cooperated with police fully and then went on to find more images of my niece. My husband never came home again. I have only seen him in court since. I thought we had a strong marriage and he was a good man. Now he's in prison and I'm figuring out single mom life. Somebody responds and talks about how strong they are, can't imagine how difficult this must be, you got this. And she responds back, thank you. It has been one of the hardest things I've ever dealt with, but I am glad the truth is out and he is facing the consequences of his actions. It's chilling to learn the person you sleep next to every night is not who you thought. She goes on to say, it has been horrible. I trusted him completely. I struggled for a while because I felt like I gave him access to my niece. He never would have been in her life if I had not trusted him. Now I recognize how much he manipulated everyone. We had just had our 6th wedding anniversary when I found the video. Our daughter was 5. I thought I knew him, but I'm very thankful that I found out before it went further and I was able to remove him from our lives before it escalated. The self-blaming is absolutely devastating to see in these accounts and stories and testimonies because as a victim, to people like this, it is reality shattering, yes, because it's like the dad that I thought I had is not who you are. And then for me, the other dad I thought that I had, the ultimate protector who would never want a man like this to be around me, turns out to want to be friends with a man like this after I spent my whole life thinking one way and being lied to and manipulated my whole life. That is earth shattering, but it is absolutely soul crushing to see people blame themselves like this. If I had not trusted him, my niece would not have been victimized. That's devastating. Because he should not have done what he did, and it's not your fault. As I've been saying, you can know every single sign, and you can have the world's biggest billboard for this kind of person walking right in front of your face, sleeping right next to you, and sometimes you might never know. It's a horrifying reality. It's the truth, and it's a truth not everybody and most people want to accept and sit with. We want to believe that we would know, especially those of us who've been victimized ourselves. We want to believe that there is no way I wouldn't be able to tell. There's no way, but there is. Because they are masters at lying, at hiding. This person says, not a family member, but a boss at a former job. He had been the editor of a local paper until it folded and had some recognition in the community. He attempted to meet up with a 14-year-old girl in a motel. It was a police sting and he was busted. Found out because they published it all, including his picture in the competing paper. Makes you think about any interactions you've had with them. And it really does make you question and think back on all of these old conversations that you've had with people like this, going back to like my biological dad. And I know I gave you guys a really brief and shortened, so I could go on forever talking about all the ins and outs of that. But knowing what I know now about who he's actually involved with, who he has actually been involved with even prior to being incarcerated because his parents have been involved in it. I can look back at so many stories that I've heard my grandma say that I thought this is just a made up scary story, and it wasn't. I can think back to so many times that I visited my dad in prison, and I was a long, blonde haired, blue eyed little girl, and him telling me that I had to promise him that I would never dye my hair, because if I dyed my hair, it would never come back as bright blonde. I could never cut my hair. He made me promise to wait to get married until he was out of prison, and that I couldn't really have a boyfriend or anything unless he had essential control over that. Even though he was incarcerated, he was in and out of the hole more times than I can count, constantly telling me that it was because he got in arguments and fights with people like my stepdad, and I believed all of this. And it wasn't until I saw those pictures of him shirtless this year that everything made sense. His reconnection with my stepdad, trying to keep my hair blonde, like all of these things. It's like I'm looking at exactly who you are for the first time in my 20 plus years of believing a lie that you fed to me since I was a child. I always thought that he was just this poor guy that came from, really bad parents who were doing substances, got him hooked on substances. He went to prison and he got better. And unfortunately, once he got out, he went back to that same old life. And I felt bad for him. I don't now at all, because this is what he's choosing, and he's not a good person. He is a danger to society. And it took me so much time to sit with that and realize that just because that's where I came from, just because he might have my name tattooed on his body next to one of those disgusting hate symbols, does not mean that I am him, or I have to live like him, or I am destined to be like him. And it definitely has nothing to do with me. His actions and behaviors are in no way, shape, or form my fault, my responsibility, or a burden that I have to bear. And it is so hard to get to that point. Now I'm going to play you guys some clips of an interview that Lad Bible Stories did here on YouTube, which I will have the full video down in the description, of a woman who is being interviewed because of content of her husband's that she found. And I specifically want to show you guys like how much this has impacted her, because like I said, I think it is so important that we see how devastating this can be to people who are in proximity to these evil, evil human beings.
Can't sleep, can't eat. I couldn't get the image out of my vision. This very pale little blonde boy. And just however many seconds it was that I saw of that film, playing over and over.
How was that experience watching the arrest for you, Rosie?
It's confusing. It's so mixed, because there's this person that you have been in love with, and although that is almost destroyed immediately, when you find something like this, that love is, it's like it's made of ice and someone's taken a hammer to it. It shatters. And it ends. It just ends. And you know that, but still there are all these emotions and feelings and things that you're fighting. When we watched him being arrested, it was like watching television. I think I was a bit just numb. You have no processing time at all for anything that's happening. It's all racing and racing in your head, and everything happening so quickly. He was arrested and gone. And then you're on to the next thing. They want to come in and they're searching your house. When I got to where I was going, looked in the back and there was something in there. And I thought, well, that's a bit odd. So I pulled it out, and it was an SD card, I think you call them, the tiny little cards that go into whatever. So I thought, it's a bit strange. So I put it into the iPad, the Apple iPad, and this box popped up, bottom left, and there was a small child there. So I ripped it out of the computer and sat there and just thought, of course it's not. That's just absolutely mental. That's just ridiculous. So I put it back in, and this time a box popped up with a load of titles. And all of the titles, every single one, was something, pretty horrendous. And I just thought, oh my God, this is actually what I thought it was. And I think I must have clicked on the first one. Because, I mean, you can't, you've got to know, haven't you? You just, curiosity and having to know. I clicked on the first one, and yeah, another couple of seconds of that, and I was like, God, can't actually believe. Yeah, you just can't believe it. Can't believe what you're seeing. You can't see that and ever forget what you've seen. It never leaves you. I ripped it out after having seen it anywhere between 2 and 5 seconds. Probably wasn't as long as 5 seconds. I don't think you need to see it for that long to realise what it is. I think I went on to autopilot. I just knew I had to do something. I knew I had to phone the police. So I picked up my phone, walked to the front of the house, and I had to speak to someone first. I had to connect with someone first. I really had to connect with someone who I loved, who loved me first. Sounds weird, but I had to. So I phoned. I was studying to be a hypnotherapist at the time. So I phoned my tutor and said, I've just found child abuse in my house. And I know I need to phone the police, but I need someone to tell me I'm doing the right thing. And he said, yeah, you are doing the right thing. I said, okay, thank you. Put the phone down, phoned the police.
I hope that you can see after my personal testimony, after the people on Reddit, and after this brave woman sharing her feelings and what happened, that you can see that this is devastating. It shatters your reality. As she said, it's like her reality was like a sheet of glass and someone just took a hammer to it. And it's like one of those things where it's like, unless you understand, I don't think anybody will ever be able to truly understand. And it's like she said, like whenever she found out, she knew that she had to call the police, but she just had to make sure she's doing the right thing. I relate to that so much, because when my stepdad asked for my consent that night, I mean, I was frozen in my room for hours. There is a huge lapse of time that I do not remember between the moment that my stepdad said that to me and I called my friend in middle school, because I didn't know. I knew what I felt. And for me, it's a little different. It's not that, like I trusted this person and I had this, and, in the context of like a husband and wife, but, this was my dad, but like I knew what I felt, but I also knew who I perceived him to be. So I didn't believe my feelings and I had to hear it from someone else. And so when my friend told me that's not normal, you need to hang up on me and call the police, and hearing that from him, it really solidified in me like, this is real. Did I do anything about it right then and there? No, I was scared to call the police. What would have happened if I called the police? It's horrifying. It is shattering. And I'll never forget when I was an adult and I had already disclosed this to my mom. My mom did not believe me, obviously, but I did not go no contact with my mom until when I was an adult. And she came to me devastated, panicked, and confided in me that she found flash drives that belonged to my stepdad that had grainy, low lighting content on it that appeared to have him harming young girls. And I will never forget, I said, Mom, are any of them me? And she said, I don't know. She sent me a picture of both of the flash drives, and to this day is still with him. She did nothing. The police did nothing. The police did nothing. And what's really sad is that, as we can see, there are people who are sometimes in, unfortunately, the same position as my mother who do something about it, who care, who deem it as ultimately unacceptable. And there is no amount of male validation in the world that would be enough for me to not do something about this, to not care. They can also face isolation and something called courtesy stigma. Whereas I've already said, guilty by association, essentially. And that is so harmful and devastating. These former friends, ex-husbands, ex-wives, former co-workers, it doesn't matter. These people in close proximity can also be victim blamed or just flat out blamed for the harm that someone they trusted did. This was put out by the University of Kent in 2023, a grounded theory model of relationship decision-making and non-offending partners of individuals accused of offending. This entire thing is a very good read, and of course I will have this in my description, and I highly urge all of you guys to go read through it all. It is very good, very informative, but I am specifically going to skip down to one particular paragraph that talks about courtesy stigma, and this entire section talks about it like more in depth, breaking it down here, here, and here. So again, please go read it all on your own because it's really good, but I think this paragraph will help us get a better understanding of exactly what courtesy stigma is and how it's harmful. With raised awareness of their association with someone who has committed a sexual offense, non-offending family members may, through no fault of their own, experience what Goffman termed courtesy stigma, a stigma by association. Consequently, society may treat non-offending family members and the individual who has offended in some respect as one. The courtesy stigma experienced by non-offending family members is a stigma by contamination combined with the stigma of their new identity as family member of a sex offender. Such stigma has been found to cause many collateral consequences for non-offending family members, similar to those experienced by those who have offended, leading family members to report feelings as if they themselves have been convicted of the offense. The consequences include housing disruption, financial hardships, barriers to employment, social isolation, disruption of family bonds, and community harassment. Yes, although we may not see it a lot, because who really wants to come online and say, hey, my family member, my friend, someone I trusted is an offender and now everybody thinks I am too. Not very many people are going to do that, because then what are other people going to do? Dogpile on top of that. So although we may not hear about it happening a lot, this absolutely happens. Families and those in proximity to people like this can be victim blamed. How could you let this happen? How could you not see the signs? How could you trust somebody to watch your kids? Already, parents who use daycares in particular are parent shamed all the time. I could never trust somebody to watch my kid. How could you leave your kid for that many hours a day? Don't you know how sad they are? Don't you know about all of the danger? They're already parent shamed enough. And even more so sometimes when something like this happens and it emboldens people to say, see, I told you so. It's your fault because you trusted someone. It's absolutely deplorable how people will point fingers at anything they deem a problem except for the actual problem itself. For some reason, it's easier and more fun for people to point the finger and victim blame and flat out blame friends and families who had absolutely nothing to do with what happened, especially if those very people are distancing themselves and going no contact with these horrible people, and yet they will still be blamed, isolated, and that's not okay. It's dangerous. These people are already questioning themselves enough. They're already questioning their own trust and their own perception and how, okay, well, if that happened, if I trusted someone like that, how can I trust anybody else again? They're already beating themselves up enough. I don't understand why society has to do things like this as if it couldn't happen to you. And obviously, I'm not talking about people like my mom. Like, people like my mom also should serve the same length sentence as someone like my stepdad should, 100%, because you knew and you did nothing about it. You are you are guilty by association at that point, but that's not who we're talking about. We're talking about people who were just in proximity, had no way of knowing, no way of being able to stop it, that are still being crucified by their own community, as if something like this couldn't happen to any of us. So what is going on with Faith Lynn Morris right now? She is currently sitting in jail with a hefty bond, awaiting her final pretrial, which is July 23rd at 9 a.m. in Medina County, Ohio, okay? For her final jury trial on July 27th at 1 p.m. So anybody who is around there and wants to witness this yourself, you can do that. I don't know if people know that you can go and witness trials and things as the public and that community. So if anybody wants to go there and be a witness to that, those are the dates and the times.
Okay. Ms. Morris, I'm going to accept your plea of not guilty to the supplemental counts 5 through 14. In this case, those supplemental counts are as follows. There's a supplemental count of battery, a felony of the 4th degree, 8 counts of illegal use of a minor or impaired person in oriented material or performance. Those are felonies of the 2nd degree. And the final count is one of gross sexual position, a felony of the 3rd degree. So accept your pleas of not guilty. This case remains set for jury trial on July 27, 2026 at 1 p.m. Our final pretrial is July 23rd, 2026 at 9 a.m.
So yeah, she pled not guilty and her final hearing trial is set for the 27th. And I just don't understand how people can just say like not guilty. Like I am genuinely curious, and I wish that there was ways to know like the thought process of people, you know, presume, because I know it's alleged that she did this. So presuming that she did this, right? What is the thought process behind saying I'm not guilty? Like, I genuinely will never understand that, because how many times have we seen this happen? Not even in just cases like this, but other cases where it's like you could have video footage of the person doing it and they will say, not guilty, I did not do that. Like actual like recorded screen time call between the person and whatever the crime was, I didn't do that, I'm not guilty. Because I think the explanation is pretty clear and simple. They don't think normally. They don't think, they only operate and think in their own reality and what they perceive to be okay and not. And that okayness is, does it make me feel okay? I don't care if I hurt someone else in the process. I can't even conceptualize how that would hurt someone else. It brought me so much joy. Like I can't. I never ever want to understand the brains of people like this, truly. So all we can do now is wait and see how this trial goes, wait and see what the jury has to say and what evidence might come out that will prove that she's guilty or prove her innocence. As you guys have already heard, the families are filing a lawsuit against her and some of the people at the facility. So I'm also really interested to see what comes out of that. I have said this so many times. I am sickened that it really seems like for the majority of us, CSA victims, CSAM victims and survivors, the only way that we will ever get any form of justice seems to be through a lawsuit. And even then we might not even get justice. Even then, not to mention how much that costs. I will never understand why when it comes to crimes against children, why that is not something the government pays to have investigated. Honestly, any violent crime, why is, I don't understand. When it comes to like these kinds of lawsuits and things like that, these are not burdens that victims and survivors should have to bear. Like if you were harmed by somebody, if you were violently harmed by somebody, it was not an accident, and you can't get justice for that, why are we having to pay out of pocket just to try to get some sort of civil justice? Like it makes no sense to me, truly. But I hope that the families, and especially the children who have been directly affected by this, who have been traumatized by the alleged actions of Faith Lynn Morris, I hope that they are being shrouded in community care. I hope that they are not having to worry about anything right now. I hope that they are not having to worry about being there for their children and also having to go to work and then dealing with that conflict of how can I trust someone else to care for my child, but I also need to work so that I can care for my child. I hope that they are being pampered and surrounded in resources and love from their community. I hope that they have access to therapies not only for themselves to be able to heal and not blame themselves if they are blaming themselves at all, but also for these children to be able to unlearn and heal from the disgusting alleged actions that Faithlyn Morris did to them, made them do to each other, or made them do to her. And I hope that any content that was filmed and distributed is found and destroyed, and anybody who shared or purchased or downloaded that content faces the exact same consequences as hopefully Faithlyn Morris will if she is found guilty. If you can relate to anybody that we have seen today and their stories, if you are somebody who has been directly impacted by something like this, whether it was a daycare teacher that you trusted, a school teacher, a partner, a friend, a family member, a coworker, it is traumatizing. It is world shattering. And I want you to know that feeling those things is normal. But you can get through it, and you should try to get through it. If you are somebody who has been affected in these things in this way, just know that it is okay to go talk to somebody about that. Get those feelings off of your chest. Be reassured that, like I have said a million times, even if they are a walking billboard of I am a, and you know every single sign, you still might not even be able to see that one. And that is not your fault. These people are awful people. They are liars and they are manipulators, and they will spend years if they have to, sometimes their whole life, to get to the end goal of what they want when it comes to their own selfish desires. And they will fool and trick anybody and everybody in their path. We don't like to say it, but they are smart. A lot of them are very smart and very well capable of hiding themselves, sometimes forever. So if you are someone who feels like you can relate to this kind of situation where your reality has been shattered, you feel blindsided, maybe you're blaming yourself, please talk to someone. Find a therapist, a psychiatrist, a group of other people who have also experienced the same thing that you can talk to and connect with and share stories and be able to say, you know, now looking back, I see X, Y, and Z. Am I reading too much into that or blah? There are things that you can do and places and people that you can talk to that will help you realize that none of this was your fault, and protecting your child at any cost was the right move, no matter how painful it might feel to you, how confusing, how conflicting. You deserve to feel safe. You deserve to not feel crazy, and you deserve to get to a place in your life and in your mental health where you can trust your judgment again and not blame yourself if someone lies or tricks you. But that's all I have for you guys today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, I'm really interested to hear your guys' thoughts down below in the comments. This is really tragic. It's heartbreaking, the fact that this happened in the first place, and the fact that we see the reality of the fact that these things can not only obviously are traumatizing for the children affected, but also the aftermath for the families involved, the friends involved, not only of the children, but also the people who thought that they knew the person who committed those crimes. It is heartbreaking and devastating, and an unfortunate reality we have to be more okay with talking about. We have to be more okay with answering those questions and being that person that says, you can come tell me anything. There is no topic too uncomfortable, because we have to be there for each other and support each other so that we can help each other out if things like this ever do happen, so that people don't feel like this is a weight that they have to carry themselves and a burden that they have to keep secret forever because they are blaming themselves, because they should not. I know I keep going on and yapping, but thank you guys so much for watching. Again, like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed this video and you have anything that you want to add on and say. And I will see you guys on the next video.